Welcome to the Path Podcast. It's March 6th, 2024. My name is Tani. I'm here with Auk. Hey, Auk.
Hey, Tani.
Glad to be here doing this with you tonight.
Yeah, same. I got here before the shop closed.
Nice.
I felt obligated to buy something. I didn't, but I sort of felt a little obligated because this is the first time I've been in the open shop in the afternoon in a long time.
And that's because of our new hours.
That's because of your new hours.
Wow, what a natural setup. I did want to talk about our new hours.
All right.
Yeah, we're open till 6 now on weekdays.
Yeah.
And I think the word is still getting out because everyone asked us to do this, and still it seems like everyone's rushing to get here by 5.
Yeah. I was rushing to get here by 5:45.
Nice.
So, yeah, it was good.
Did you get to see the shop in action and customers and stuff?
I think maybe because it was raining. Actually, it was raining when I got here. There was no one in here except for Brian and
Maybe Jesse?
not Jesse. Relatively new to the
Oh,
shop.
Drew. Everyone should come in and meet Drew. We're probably
Yes.
going to have Drew on the podcast soon. Drew's been in the industry a long time, and he's
Yep.
been at the Path for a few weeks, and he's killing it.
And somewhat new to Southern California, like a year and a half or so.
So a comment on Drew is Drew can be sort of left alone to service ride already.
Whoa.
And often we have someone who's a manager service riding because such a high skill, high vision kind of job.
Right.
That if we don't have, it's not something that's easy to pull someone up to.
Right.
If the person that we have planned to do it isn't there, it's usually something someone has to pull kind of not down, but
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a really, really important job with a ton of responsibility that requires a ton of knowledge and good people skills and good customer service skills, which is a kind of a rare combo.
Yeah.
And Drew's really stepping nicely into that role, and then other roles around the shop already too. So we'll definitely be talking to him more.
Yes. 7 seconds to make a first impression, and Drew made a good one in the first 7 seconds.
That's awesome.
much.
That is awesome.
And Brian was here too, so I was like, "Hey, you gotta get him back on the show as a guest host."
Oh yeah, Brian would be good to get back on
Yeah.
the show.
He says, "Nah, I'm not sure."
Nah,
I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And
I wonder if the camera's a deterrent for him.
are you kidding? Like I don't know. He's good looking to me.
No, I just mean as far as like he came on the show when there was no video. I wonder if that's
true.
the change,
Maybe.
or if he just did it and he got that out of that. He dealt with going across that comfort zone. He doesn't need to do it over and over again.
Yeah. There's so much good conversation. I mean, that could happen.
Or maybe he was just being humble.
Yeah, true. Humble brag. Kidding. He's
Was
not
that?
humble brag. He's not the type.
No, I mean humble as in like I don't need to come on the podcast.
Yeah, totally. We should. Him and Val. Maybe him and Val could come on together.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Great. So shop news. What's going on in the shop? New hours besides new hours. Yep.
Truthfully, all of 2023, we were working towards having the shop be open.
Right.
And so many times I sat right around here and tried to picture the flow and the everyone's interactions and the layouts. And now services, we opened this location in December of 2023.
Right.
We got keys in January.
Right.
Maybe even December of 22. And at first service wasn't here. Now service is here, and just more and more is going on here every day, and watching it kind of happen. Is
Right.
Really, that thing where like you envision something and work hard for it for a while.
Right.
And then you get to see it happening. It's a
Yeah.
good feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's been awesome.
That is great, and it looks and feels fantastic.
Customers have a really good reaction to it. The staff is having a really good reaction to it. I will say, we still have our old shop as an outlet store.
Right.
And between getting more used to the lighting and the fresh paint and everything here and the newer displays and everything, between that and getting all of the freshest, newest, hottest inventory out of the old location, it really, when I go into the outlet store, it's like, whoa, like it's not as bright. It's
Right.
not as like it's a big
Not
difference.
as easy flow through the shop.
Yeah,
and-
a lot of yeah.
yeah. So
It's like when it's like that thing we talk about when you try short cranks and then go back to longer cranks, or anything like that.
right, we got to speak. Let's revisit short cranks
Okay.
in a little bit. So
Other news around the Dawn Patrol ride continues every other Tuesday, Lot C at Irvine Park.
and I think
to Ride Oaks.
starting this weekend, that 6:45 time and 7 o'clock pedaling is going to work out just right for daylight.
Yep.
Right, because we're springing forward the Sunday before the Wednesday this show airs.
That's true. The 10th.
Yep. So by the time this show airs, the Dawn Patrol will really be a Dawn Patrol.
The sun will just be coming up at 6:45.
Yep. So that's
And
exciting.
Women's Wednesday will be back officially starting April 3rd.
April 3rd.
In Santiago Oaks, meet at 5:15. Women only, Lot C.
Yep.
Even if you're a really, really cool dude or whatever, it's a women's ride.
You're not allowed.
But women, the pictures, the videos, the stories. I wish I could go on the ride. You should go.
You should go.
I mean, literally, though, just because it seems like a fun ride.
I wonder if Aaron
and everything.
Yeah, I wonder if Aaron's going to join. Aaron, guest on the show, Aaron and Eric Bruner. I wonder if Aaron's going to join that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, she's been killing it on some rides on her own and what have you. And yeah, Aaron, if you're out there, I'd encourage you to head out there if you can.
Yeah.
If not, that's totally okay too.
And then also with daylight savings time comes the return of our Thursday shop rides, which meet at 5:30. You can check the locations. They meet at 5:30 on Thursdays, and I would say check the Path website and look under rides to see the location, or text our shop.
How long do those do the Thursday night rides last?
I suspect they last longer later into the summer. I don't know. I haven't been going on them.
Right. Because I wonder if that's something that, if they do last long enough, if that might be something that any of the shop folks end up showing up at for the second half of the ride. Might be a little tough now that the shop closes at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but no, that's exciting. The evening or afternoon rides starting up again. That's exciting. I'm excited.
I'm gonna try to make some of those rides this year.
I think I might too. That 5:30, I could actually make that.
Yeah.
That'll be exciting. Let's see what else is going on at the shop.
Well, it's raining right now, but all the local trails have, other than right now or times when they're super muddy,
Right.
the local trails have been really good.
Right.
Like fun, fast.
A lot of work going on the local trails in the park. So I think that's because it has rained and given people a chance to get out and do some work, as well as the conditions.
That, and I think in between rains, we've had some kind of cool, not too windy, not too sunny days, so the moisture gets retained.
Right.
And day after day, there's not really like if you go to Oaks, there's not really puddles, but Cactus has moisture on the trail top to bottom.
Right. Which
And
is
it's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's running PRs and stuff.
Right. And
Especially if they have any switchblade.
Did you PR that trail already?
No, well, no, but I am really off the couch right now, like more than ever in my life, I feel like. And I had probably my fastest time in like 5 or 10 years
Oh my gosh.
or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was your time?
Right here, huh?
Right here, calling out on the show.
I'll tell you what.
5 or 10 years.
I was thinking about this earlier. I do want to brag, but I don't want to be that guy that bragged.
Okay.
That being said, I also know it's not that great of a time. It's just good for me.
Right.
And it's just good for me right now because I've done it like 10 seconds faster in the past.
105.
Good guess. A little lower.
102.
Keep going.
Whoa. Really?
It was over a minute. So Yeah, it's been a long time since I've been able to get under a minute on that trail.
Wow.
But yeah, and honestly too, like not riding ragged even a little bit.
Right.
Like totally under control. If there'd been a hiker, I would have been able to stop.
Right.
That,
Right.
And no, not even like foot out really, except maybe foot out a little. And so I feel like for me, like the hard right switchback in the series of switchbacks at the bottom, just I like to do that turn foot out, but not because I'm like out of control or like pushing it too hard or anything.
Right.
But yeah, Oaks and Hawk is running really smooth and fast too. And like I didn't go, but the Path crew went out and did a ride at Oaks the other day, and like everyone was getting PRs.
Yeah. I've been able to hit the the high speed straight shoot at the start. I shouldn't say it's not a shoot, but the high speed
Of Cactus.
of
Hawk.
Hawk. I have been hitting the kind of the left line.
Okay.
Staying to
I
the
feel
left.
like my old line has gone down that, and I'm confused on what to do there.
Yeah.
Because
The
you're staying very far to the left.
Yeah.
Doesn't that kind of run out after a while? So you have to move to the right as you get to the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
But I
sense.
feel like getting to the left, even though you have to move to the right at the bottom, sets you up pretty well for the sweeping left at the bottom of that.
I'll tell you what. I've ridden Hawk twice on my new Switchblade, and both times I buzzed the rear tire in the exact same spot, and it's the only spot I've buzzed the rear tire so far. But I'm not used to 29, and having really short chain stays makes the buzz a bigger thing.
Right. Closer.
And,
right.
yeah.
For sure.
And I can prove that with science, because if I don't position my seat just right, it buzzes my seat if it's all the way down.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And on one of the times I felt a pain in my private area that I haven't felt since I was like 10. You know when you're like a kid and you just don't know how to look out for yourself as good, and you just kind of run into maybe run into a doorway pelvis first or something?
Right.
I was like, I remember this feeling. I don't like it.
Wait, what part of Hawk is that?
It is kind of a slightly kinky right turn into like a, if you're doing it at any kind of speed, it's kind of a drop into a steep section. It's towards the middle. It's the second half of the trail after the rad sweeping turns.
Oh, right.
I love those turns so much.
Oh,
in
yeah,
the middle
yeah.
of the trail, like you do the swooping up and over, and then there's like a, what is it? It's a hard left, hard right.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
another
yeah.
hard
Yep,
left,
yep,
and
yep.
then there's the multi-line section.
Yep.
And then it's after that.
Right.
Before you get kind of somewhat right before I think you get to the
what
I consider to be the final section.
Totally. Yeah. I know what you're talking about, because that kinky right it's kind of steep and janky, and then right before the last section of the high speed.
You don't really need to get back, but like I'm in a phase of riding right now where I end up getting back right there,
right
behind the seat a little bit, and then you kind of get a little landing.
Yeah, for sure. And if it's
and on the first time it happened, it pushed me right into the back of my seat.
gosh, right.
Yeah. Second time it was more of a mild, but second time I rode it a lot smoother, and it was more of a mild buzz.
Right. It's a mild buzz.
A buzz, like.
And that's the type of thing where, like you said, things are running fast right now.
Yeah.
And so you're not feeling like you're pushing it super hard. And so that type of feature to me can sneak up on you.
You know, I think, at least for myself, part of how I know if I feel like I'm not going super fast if I'm not losing traction. And so if the traction's really good, you don't realize how fast you're going.
Right. Man, and right now you are right. The trails are running.
It's awesome. Riding's been really fun lately. And I've been riding my Switchblade more than, so little background on my riding lately. Throughout 2023, I was super, super busy with learning curves with all left and right and just projects and transitions, and didn't get to ride very much. And before 2023, I probably rode 10 times.
Right.
If that.
Right.
The whole year. And
Yeah,
most
for
of them
sure.
the first half of the year too. And before 2023, I was kind of averaging 1 to 2 rides a week, most weeks,
Sure.
which is like just enough to slowly get slower,
Okay. Right.
roughly. Or maybe if it's 2 times a week, maintain.
Right.
So also towards a lot in 21 and 22, more than half my rides were e-bike rides.
Yep. Yeah.
Because of where I was as a rider at that time, riding the e-bike helped my cardio and actually made me feel pretty good when I got back on my muscle bike.
Right. And it kept the skill side of it up too,
Right.
because it's more
Right.
laps.
More reps, yeah.
Yeah.
And more laps, yeah. And then 2023, most of my rides were e-bike rides.
Right.
So I think what happened was I really started to get a chance to lose some real muscle strength in my legs
The anaerobic side of things.
over
Right.
the
Yeah.
e-bike,
Yeah, for
slowly
sure.
over all that e-biking.
sure.
And then lost whatever cardio I had over 2023.
And the fact that you only had 10 rides, they were 10 e-bike rides.
So speaking of Strava, I'm looking at my like times up shoots.
Oh,
And
right.
it's like, 20. I used to be like respectable for a trail rider. Like, sometimes, like I think I did it in 8 minutes one time.
Yeah.
Like,
that's more than respectable. Yeah, totally.
and then like my average time went up to like over 10 minutes and then
Right.
over 12 minutes and then over 14 minutes. And lately I've been doing, I think like 18 minutes,
Right.
like, which like, if you
That's
go
what-
on
it's-
Strava and look, it'll be like, oh, I was like 60th out of 67 for the day on that climb. Like, and I will add to that. I think there's a little bit of a dynamic where the other slow climbers, a lot of them are on e-bikes.
All right.
So their Strava isn't on my Strava that day, right? Because they're on the e-bike Strava.
Correct.
So I do think there is this thing where the non-e-bike Stravas have gotten a lot faster overall on average on the climbs, because if you're not on e-bike, it's because you're a climber.
You're a climber.
That's one of my theories.
It could be.
But
right.
even compared to myself, I'm slow on the really brutally slow on the climbs right now.
Right.
So that's just kind of a side note of like just life.
Where
right?
you're at. Right. But you're coming back.
I'm riding more and I'm riding the muscle bike more and I'm really liking it. And I've been thinking about why everyone needs to have a muscle bike
Right.
in addition to an e-bike.
Right.
And part of it I really do think the e-bike for mountain biking, training, just like building strength and fitness is
Right.
better for cardio. My opinion. Like you're going to be able to get more cardio on the e-bike, or I can, than I will on the muscle bike.
Yes. You get more, cardio, like a foundational
spin class.
cardio. Yeah. It's like a spin class.
Like with where on the muscle bike, I tend to get, if I look at my stats, actually not that much cardio and a lot of anaerobic.
Yeah, for sure. And
And I think both things are good.
both things. Yeah. I
And
totally
even-
agree with that.
And in addition to that, psychologically, it's good to do. We've talked about Huberman on the show a
Right.
little bit. We both are kind of fans, I think.
Yep.
Awesome podcast.
Yep. For sure.
Huberman Labs.
Yep. Free content too. I like that approach.
He was recently, one of his guests, they were recently talking about the benefits of doing things you don't want to do.
Oh, interesting.
And not just the psychological benefits, but the actual physical, the growth of certain parts of your brain that are associated with mental clarity in older ages and long life and all kinds of good stuff.
Right.
So I found that was just like a little spice on these other thoughts I was having about like.
It's not like you don't it's not like you don't want to ride a pedal bike, a muscle bike.
I would say most good pedal bike rides, unless I'm riding consistently 2 to 3 times a week, have a time when I'm like, man,
I could be on my e-bike.
There's a big part of me that wants to quit, right? Like,
yeah.
it's like, this is hard.
Yeah.
And it hurts. It's
Yeah.
like physically painful. And, and like a lot of my body is telling me to shut it down.
Yeah.
And
I was having that when I first switched over to start testing the Fairline cranks. The first ride or two, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like riding kid style cranks,
they're
and,
so short
and it's
for you.
really hard. Oh my gosh! But then mentally, you gotta, yeah. And I think there's a physical thing. Your
Some muscle
muscles,
memory and
muscle
stuff, yeah.
memory, and your muscles get back into the anaerobic.
Point being, like if I'm frustrated,
Right.
first of all, interesting little thought here. If I'm very, very happy, I'm very likely to ride my e-bike, but
interesting.
not so likely to ride the muscle bike.
Oh.
Just psychologically.
Okay.
Like,
Sure.
if I'm frustrated, I'm a little more likely to ride the muscle bike. And then I started noticing, like, also, like, the e-bike doesn't fix the muscle, the frustration the way the muscle bike does. Or the angst. Like, if I've had a day that I get home and I'm like having a hard time stopping thinking about it.
Right. Right.
Or
The muscle bike. You got to get over the hump. You got to get over the hump of getting out on the muscle bike. But once you do, it fixes issues, helps to it's a greater catharsis.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could see that. Yeah. I actually think the performance of a muscle bike on the downhill is just different, even than a light e-bike. The way it handles, I mean, 28, 29, 30 pounds is different than 40, 44 pounds. Yeah.
We were speculating about the weight of a relay battery on the last show. I weighed mine.
Oh.
And I think, if I remember correctly, it was lighter than we were speculating.
Whoa.
The whole battery was
Interesting.
I wish I had written it down, but I think it was like in the 4s.
Wow. So that bike would be a 40-pound bike. The relay would be a 40-pound. No. I take that back because it's got the motor. Nope, it's got the motor.
Yeah.
But it'd be a 36, 35-pound bike.
If it was a muscle bike?
Yeah.
Well, Aspire pretty much, I think, is more or less a relay with a muscle bike.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably 36, 37 pounds most of the time.
Yep.
How we would ride it.
Right.
So I've been more into the muscle biking lately. I've been actually enjoying it. And part of the reason I got this, so I kept getting these muscle bikes that were kind of like a little bit more specialty tools.
Right.
And they're super fun, but they're also kind of like often not quite exactly the best tool for the job,
Sure.
if it's not the thing they're the specialty tool for. And I love that style of bike. They're kind of really niche, like exactly for this
right
terrain
for that thing
and style of riding
yeah.
bikes. The Switchblade's not that. The Switchblade's kind of the antithesis of that. It's the all-arounder.
Right.
But like, it's always fun. Like I'm always having fun if I'm riding it, and I'm never like,
right.
This bike on this trail, like,
right. Even climbing.
yeah, I don't think I would be way. It's not a super light bike,
right? But you're not going to be
pounds, and it's pretty cheat out.
Yeah.
But
you're not going to be way off the back of any group.
If it was if it was in that true downcountry category, my bike would still probably weigh 28.
Yeah,
so how much
for
faster
sure.
am I going to be on a climb from 3 pounds?
Yep.
Somewhat faster.
Yeah. But it's not so much heavier that it just makes the climbs terrible.
Till I get back down to about 160 pounds, it probably is less of a difference because it's less of my overall weight, right? Like the lighter you are, the more a pound is a big deal.
Yeah, that's true.
As an overall package.
Right.
But also it really, the bottom bracket never feels like it's swinging around. It's just got a really sure-footed feel and solid.
Right.
They do a good job at pivot of bottom bracket stiffness, which, that's a combination. That the perception of bottom bracket stiffness to me means that you have a torsionally stiff down tube.
Yep.
And laterally stiff chainstays.
Yeah.
And they do a really good job of that at pivot, I feel like as good as it gets, and still keep it tuned to where it doesn't feel jarringly stiff, right?
Right. Well, and with the adjustments that they've made on the suspension design, it's like all of those things are working together to make this bike great fun to ride in a lot of different conditions, a lot of different places.
Yeah. You'll have to borrow mine. We're seeing also, I don't think I'm the only one. We're seeing kind of more muscle bike sales to people who have been e-biking lately.
Oh,
And
interesting.
it's not because they're giving up their e-bikes.
Right.
Almost ever.
Yeah.
There's not, I can't think of a time where someone came in and they're like, I got an e-bike. It was fun. Actually, I can. Nathan.
Yeah. Right.
It does happen, I guess. But
he was so early
Yeah,
on.
very early.
I think if he had gotten in a little bit later, I'm not sure that would have happened.
Yeah. So I think that usually the common story that I hear is, I love my e-bike. This is my third one, whatever.
Right.
But I want to do more muscle biking again, or I have been doing more muscle biking again too.
Right.
And so that, and a lot of people who didn't want to buy a bike in a seller's market,
Right.
are now, and who had plenty of bikes at
Are
this
now
point. Now
thinking-
those bikes, a lot of them are 2020s, 2019s.
Yep,
And we're seeing customers that we see all the time for service, but haven't seen in a few years for a bike. Like,
Now
it's time.
they're-
I'm ready.
Yeah. And by waiting, they're getting all the modern geometry from 2019 to now. I think geometry has changed.
It's interesting. We're selling a fair amount of the old switchblades to people who are like, I liked that it was a little steeper head angle.
Oh, interesting.
And of course, the slacker's not better for everyone, right? Like, maybe.
Really?
Yeah, I questioned myself.
Okay,
I
as you're
said it.
saying that,
But
it could be. I mean, the
You
old
know what?
Switchblade
I
was
think
an amazing bike.
the
I
reason,
mean, it is, not was. It is. It's a
yeah,
great
I
bike.
think the reason why what you say is valid is because I often make arguments that categories of people who are assumed by
Yeah.
many to not prefer slacker head angles, I end up actually preferring them.
Right.
It's not, and I guess my theory on this is that the industry likes, the bike industry and bike designers like to stereotype riders.
Right.
And some of this is kind of shred signaling on the designer's part of like, well, you guys don't need this. Like,
Right.
I like this, but it is sort of, when you see one person is just how two people are riding, it is easy to assume that they might not want the same head angle if their speed is one's maybe going twice as fast as the other, or riding 30-degree steeper trails or something.
Right,
It's easy
right.
to see why you would assume that someone might want a different head angle.
Right.
But I think the common tropes about who doesn't want a slacker head angle, I tend to disagree with. As in, I think that casual riders often, to a point,
Right. Right.
do like a pretty slack head angle, and riders who aren't necessarily looking to do anything too gnarly often still do appreciate a slacker head
Right.
angle.
Right.
And actually, who like steeper head angles are often highly skilled riders who have a specific ride fantasy
Right.
that they don't want a new ride fantasy.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
That's one category. But also, if you live somewhere with a lot less vertical change than where we live, and
Right.
less steepness, and maybe a lot more tight technical stuff,
Right.
maybe there's no question in my mind that a steeper head angle corners better at slow and mid speeds.
Right. And if that is all that you are experiencing,
One of the ways I
Yeah.
think the quote unquote industry gets it wrong is that a lot of the people who aren't cornering really, really hard still do even more almost want a really stable handling bike.
right.
They don't want a twitchy bike.
Right. Right. But it's for those people, it's maybe learning if they're newer to riding, then they just learn on that.
You know who else prefers steeper head angles?
Hmm.
People who do backflips and 360s. No, I'm like, I could not be more serious.
Right.
Like, if you are doing backflips and 360s, I think you want a steeper head angle.
Right. Just overall, even if you're not doing your backflips and 360s.
Cowan explained this to me a long time ago. John Cowan,
Yep.
Kona Pro.
Yep.
And that was during a move towards steeper head angles on serious jump bikes.
Right.
Competition dirt
Right.
jump bikes.
Right.
For rotations, basically, and for all kinds of shorter wheelbase reasons.
Right. Yeah. So dirt jump bikes.
Especially dirt jump bikes that are for a specific style of dirt jumps,
Right.
and then a specific style of tricks.
Right.
and then understanding that the people asking for this have a precision in their bike riding that allows them to ride a bike that twitchy at those speeds.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Like that's a skill.
That is. Yeah, no, that's all that I was thinking. I'm glad that the dirt is coming back for you.
Yeah, me too. It feels really good to like the days when you get home from a ride and it has cleared your mind
Right.
and your body, you do sleep better.
Right.
And
because as off the couch as you were the first few times that you're kind of getting back into a regular ride, those first couple of rides, maybe it's just a struggle to get through the ride. And
if they're longer rides,
yeah. And the mental clarity aspect of it doesn't necessarily, you're not reaping all the benefits in the first couple rides. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad.
We have some new Santa Cruz demos in the shop.
I was looking at that.
Blur medium and large trail with S-kit.
Yep.
50-10 small and medium with the S-kit. And high tower large and extra large with the S-kit. I think those are going to be really fun demos for the crew to try and our customers to try.
Yeah. I mean, those are all, man, that's a really cool progression. Blur trail,
Yep.
50-10, high tower. I heard someone in the shop is building a high tower.
I guess it could be true.
Sanjay? Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with all the employee builds sometimes.
We'll have to get his thoughts on what that high tower is like. So what does your demo fleet look like these days?
We have a bunch of Trans 2s.
Yep.
So if you're looking for like a $2,000 or so mountain bike, full
Right.
suspension, we have
Or if you're just looking for what does a trans feel like, you can demo that, and that gives you a sense of what the $10,000 version will cost as well. Will feel like.
we have most sizes, maybe all sizes of Heckler SL.
Fantastic.
We have most sizes of Shuttle AM and Shuttle SL. We have some Orbea Wilds.
Right.
And these are just the highlights. We have a lot of demo bikes right now.
This is fantastic to see that the demo fleet is back.
Yeah. Yep.
Shuttle AM, it's under 50 pounds.
The top shelf version of it is.
With that's the XO, right? XO
I believe
build?
that has a 630 battery in it to help it get to that weight. If I remember
630.
correctly.
Oh,
Or
interesting.
a slightly smaller battery.
630. I thought it's 700.
I'm gonna look it up.
All right.
Pretty sure that the one with the race motor. That's also how it gets.
No,
to
the
that weight.
XO build.
Oh, the XO build.
The XO build is like 47 and a half or 48. 48.
Come on.
48.
Really?
Let me see. I've got a text here.
And who's the text from?
It didn't have pedals. It was from Jeff, who's been on the the show before. Because we were talking about that.
I thought I weighed an X build at 49 pounds, but maybe it was an XO build.
Jeff, Eric, and I were talking about it on our recent ride in the San Gabes.
Yeah.
And Jeff was like, that Shuttle AM was just a pretty amazing feeling bike. And so we're like, I wonder how much that weighs. 48 and a half, Shuttle AM XL Pro, extra large Pro XO build, no pedals, 48 and a half.
That's pretty awesome. That's not a smaller battery.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to weigh an XX build, and we'll have to come back and talk about it more.
In size medium. Because this is an X. Do you have any in the shop? We can weigh them after the show today.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to check that out. Fact check.
So Over the Hump Winter Series got canceled.
Yes.
Talk about that on the show already?
No, I don't think we
talked about
did.
it before the show.
Yep.
They scheduled races for they call it the Summer Series, but it seems like it's earlier than than typical.
It almost
starts in
feels like almost feels like the first half of. It almost feels like the second half of this Summer Series is when the first half used to be. So it's the first half of this Summer Series starts in April, like you're saying.
Have they announced if there's going to be any slalom?
I don't think so. I thought I read in that announcement that they're trying to figure it out.
Maybe that's why they're starting it early. so that they can do something else later.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Interesting. I'll have to call Matt and ask. We have the, let's see.
Sky Park Women's
go.
International Day, May 4th. All these really cool women's events.
Yeah.
So
There's more and more women riding, and it's awesome.
that is great.
Yeah. I mean, not just from a business standpoint,
But just in general, period. That's fantastic.
I think it's good to just have more people in the. Obviously, it's good to have more people in the sport,
Right.
but it's also good to have more kinds of people in the sport.
Right.
I think.
Right. I would agree with that. So what does the Women's International Day look like?
I wish I knew more about it. I
Yeah.
don't know a ton. I mean, Sky Park is a pedal-up bike park.
Yep.
And they have awesome amenities, and it's really clean and nice and pleasant there.
I suspect they probably have vendors and maybe some demos going on at this
Yes.
International Day. So, yeah, check out Sky Park website and stay tuned for more information on that.
It's a really cool place to ride and socialize, and there's trails for all skill levels for real.
Yeah.
A lot of places say they have trails for all skill levels, and that's kind of sort of true from an intermediate mountain biker perspective,
Right.
who look at a trail that's easy for them and think it's a beginner trail.
Right. Right.
But it's not really a beginner trail,
Exactly,
right? And if you ever take someone mountain biking who's an actual beginner and who doesn't have
And
a
they
BMX
try that, and
they
they're
don't
like-
have a BMX background, and they don't have a moto background, and they're not a natural adrenaline junkie, and
Right.
like you're gonna find out that maybe it's not a beginner trail.
That is so true.
But Sky Park has real beginner trails, I think, and even those are exciting for a beginner. It's
Right.
not like they're safe or like
Right.
or
It's not like the dirt trail on the side of the pavement that
they're
the side
real
of the
mountain
road.
bike. They're
Right.
trails that will give you a real taste of mountain biking, but as safely as possible, I feel like,
great.
and with as little intimidation as possible.
Yeah.
But I took a new rider mountain biking. I think it's called, what's the real beginner, sleigh ride, I believe it's called.
Okay.
And at the bottom, she's like, in that one turn, I was drifting. Like, like it's like,
Right.
you kind of have to adjust your perspective for a real, actual new rider.
Right.
Like,
Right. No, that's fantastic. That's another place I've never ridden at.
You've never ridden at Sky Park?
Never ridden at Sky
Maybe we'll
Park.
fix that this year.
We should.
Yeah, and Sky Park's, I think, awesome place for e-bikes.
I can
It's
imagine.
an awesome place for any bike,
Right.
but you can really get some laps in on an e-bike there.
I believe it. And if you happen not to charge your battery in your e-bike, you could take it out and maybe pedal. Like I forgot to charge my battery
Oh,
the other day. It was horrendous.
tell me more.
I felt I felt I felt a certain level of like humiliation. And,
So this was your trance or your?
this was my relay.
Okay.
And I had just done the San Gabe's ride with Eric and Jeff, and so I had borrowed your relay battery because that day we did, I think it was 26 miles, 5,000 feet of climbing and descending, and there's another part of the story. But anyways, I get home, and on the relay batteries when you plug them in, they show you that they're charging.
Yep.
And then when they're done, it just turns off.
Mm.
Right? No lights flashing, just turns off. No green light, just off. So I plugged mine in, left. I must have kicked it or something and disconnected it at some point in the charge or shortly thereafter because it was off. So then I took it off. Then I charged your battery. I met Jeff to ride, and I get the bike off and we're like ready to ride. Beautiful afternoon. Like the trails are probably just drying out or dried out enough to ride in between rains. And then I get the little white flashing light on the relay. And I'm like, shoot, something's wrong with it. Because it's kind of a similar thing when I've had this before. And I'm like, shoot, what happened? Either it's wigging out on me or I forgot to charge the battery. And so I get home. I'm like, Jeff, I'm super sorry. Jeff had a great ride. But so I got home. Sure enough, I had forgotten to charge. Whatever reason, I had forgotten to charge the battery.
So you didn't ride at all.
I didn't ride at all.
Bummer.
It was a bummer.
I'm surprised you didn't take the battery out and ride anyway.
I thought about that, but Jeff was on an e-bike,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Yeah.
I could have, because the relay is supposed to be pedalable.
Yeah, you could do it. I mean, you wouldn't be keeping up with Jeff on his e-bike. You
Correct.
could get a ride in.
Correct.
It'd be an interesting experiment.
Yep.
Do you know how to do walk mode on a relay?
It's isn't it push in on the little
Okay.
dial
I
thing?
think that might be right.
Yep.
I was trying to get mine to do it the other day, and I was having trouble, but I think I maybe just wasn't doing it
Yeah.
the right way.
How many people forget, like, so when you go on an e-bike ride, do you turn yours on all the time? Do you
Yes.
turn it on just to double check
Before I leave, you mean?
before you leave?
I would say I used to do that more. I've started trusting them a little more, maybe.
Yep.
But I still do that sometimes. Yeah.
I
I mean, how about this? Do you test ride your bike before you leave your house? Because I do that sometimes. And
I
not
do that
others, too.
sometimes. I do that sometimes
If I
too.
test ride the bike, I turn it on.
For sure. For sure. And I think I have a practice of doing that, but maybe I don't, because I obviously didn't this time.
I don't always test ride my bike before I go, especially if I feel like I know how it's going to ride based on recent rides
Right.
or recent work.
But it's sort of like the PK squeeze, the to squeeze the brake lever as you walk by your bike.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like I thought I had as part of my routine is turn the bike on, even if I'm not going to test ride it, just turn it on. It's almost like a nervous habit. But anyways, just turn your bike on before you leave, because it'll tell you.
Speaking of the ring controller and how to do the walk mode, it's another thing I've been thinking about lately that had this moment of aha about.
Right.
That ring controller gets a lot of criticism.
Yeah.
A lot of, like, if you read the comments
I believe it.
and stuff,
Yep.
a lot of people criticize the ring controller.
Yep.
And to the point where it's kind of like the cool thing kid to criticize.
Yep.
Even. Maybe.
Turns off sometimes during the
think
ride.
Mostly the criticism is that something about it doesn't seem very it's not very positive. And I also think the fact that you push it in to do the thing
Yep.
gives it a floppy feel.
It does.
If you don't know
That's
that's a function,
Yep.
it feels cheap.
Yep.
If you know it's a function, that changes it a little bit.
Right.
Um,
I will say, even though you know it's a function, it still doesn't feel quite as polished. It almost feels like you could have
compared
done.
to a button or compared to a shifter or a dropper post lever.
Correct.
Or what are we comparing it to,
Correct.
I guess?
Yeah. Like if
Um,
I could imagine an industrial engineer designing that ring controller, maybe I would have said, like, could you make it feel?
I would want a more I guess I maybe would want a little bit more resistance, but it would be a fine line.
Between too much and not, yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about it. I'm pretty sure every other e-bike it's 2 buttons that I know of.
Yeah, I think you're
The
right.
ring controller is actually unique in that sense, in
Yeah.
that it's the only one that has this up-down lever,
Yep.
up, down, and in.
Yep.
To having gone back and forth a little bit lately and been using it and stuff, from a riding
Yep.
performance perspective, there's no I'm never searching for the ring drive.
I agree.
I search for the buttons
Yep.
on every e-bike I've ever owned.
And I think, like, maintaining the walk mode, I think the ring drive is easier to maintain the walk mode.
So, here a few things. People criticize the ring drive that they fail sometimes, and they do.
Right.
Bosch controllers fail sometimes.
Right.
Shimano controllers fail sometimes. Yamaha controllers fail
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yep.
Maybe ring drive controllers fail more. I wouldn't say yes or no to that right
Right.
now. I'd want to like really think about it and talk to some other employees and some even like brands and stuff. But they're not failing left and right.
Yeah.
Like when someone says that if someone is having a problem with their Fazua bike, my first assumption is, it's probably a ring controller. Like in fact, it could be a few things, but like
Right.
they're not like sus in my opinion.
Right.
From a reliability standpoint. And honestly, like I agree that they could feel more positive. I agree even like the shape and the machining could be maybe cleaned up
Yep.
to make it look
Yep.
kind of just more cool.
Right.
But It's pretty low profile compared to most of the button systems.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's also way less screaming I'm on
I'm
an
an
e-bike
e-bike.
compared to the other button
I
systems.
agree.
So it's more discreet.
Right.
But most importantly, it's
I think the
it's more
functionality, like you
ergonomic
said,
and
yes,
functional for me.
yes, I agree with you on that.
And that's really what matters overall.
Right.
So I've kind of gone from this. Yeah, people don't really seem to like the ring controller, and I kind of agree about some of the criticism to that, but I actually think it's my favorite controller. And it's got the like nub on it, and you know how I mentioned it's low profile. If you made that a little lower profile,
Right.
or even just maybe a grippy surface, it would be really low profile,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, right. You could make it like instead of having a nub, just make a grippy surface on it.
or a depression that your thumb could slide into, or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I would almost rather see it be concave instead of convex.
Right. Right.
That being said, I do think the simple up down is more bike performance friendly and more ergonomic than a couple buttons on a pad.
If you are trying to make that shift, focusing as you're as you're descending, trying to up or down your power, that is to me the least distracting.
Yeah. Or even like a high paced climb with turns and rocks in it.
Yep.
So I really I like a lot of things about the Fazua more and more the more I ride it.
Yep.
So
yeah, and I'll say the ring controller, again, the ring controller, keeping it in walk in awkward positions.
Oh,
right? Like say you're trying to keep it in walk and you're trying to push your bike up something.
For the ring controller for me to be able to say that the ring controller is hands down the best, it needs to become wireless.
Oh.
Because that is with the current Bosch system, in my opinion, it's uglier. It's more likely to be fumbled for.
But it's wireless.
It is cool that it's wireless.
Yeah.
Which does, I think, overall make it more reliable too.
A wireless ring controller.
Yeah, that would be money.
That would be. Yeah, I agree.
And for that matter, I almost feel like I want my AXS shifter to be a ring controller.
Ooh. It's kind of like the blip button thing on the Axis controller, except
buttons are still buttons.
Buttons are still buttons, I know.
I like the idea of a tiny rotational lever that you use with your thumb.
Up, down. That would be awesome.
Yeah. And then at that point, too, AXS dropper post should be ring controller type.
I mean, you could do up, down, in to drop. You could have 3 functions on that.
And you could have a couple ring controllers next to each other. I'm going to put ring controllers everywhere on my bike. also the hitters.
But if you had one ring controller on your right hand, it could be up, down for shifting and in for your dropper post.
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't need to have a dropper post.
Nothing on the left hand.
side. Golly, wireless.
On the muscle bike, nothing on the left side.
And you could have it wireless.
All right.
Oh,
I think we just invented the coolest thing ever.
Gosh. Staying on the Fazua kind of interface, and so getting back to my San Gabe's ride, right? I borrowed your battery, and that was my spare. That was my range extender. Was an extra Fazua battery, and put that in just a normal backpack, not a normal backpack, but a Mission Workshop backpack, mountain bike pack. Worked out really well. But what was interesting is I think I might have been able to do that 5,000 feet of climbing in 26 miles without that battery.
I was speculating that you might.
Because I climbed about the first 1,000 feet of gain in boost. And then I was like, maybe I should. I don't need it because we were riding with somebody who had 700 watt hours. And so they were minding their battery the whole time. So I was like, I don't need to be in boost. I could be in like 2 of 5, and that worked out well. So then I dropped it back down to 3 for another, 1,000 feet, and then for the rest of the ride I was in 2. But I think if I hadn't done that full boost for the 1,000 feet and the 3 for the next 1,000 feet, I might have been able to get through 5,000 feet.
At what point in the ride did you have to switch batteries?
Gosh. Not until maybe halfway down the descent. Or maybe 70, maybe 25% into the descent.
So how bad would it have been if you didn't have an extra battery?
Not bad, because I would have been...
There's not really any big climbs or anything.
No, on the relay, it would have been... I would just put it to test. Maybe I would have just taken the battery out, put it in my backpack.
You know, it's interesting. I think I'd rather have it in the bike.
Yeah, I could see that.
But I've never had one on my back. How was it?
But for the pedaling, though, yeah.
Did it hurt your back?
No, it didn't. I mean, because I was thinking, man, this felt like a Maxwell pack. But it not so much a Maxwell pack, but just our friend Maxwell, he's notorious for having like a 25 or 30 pound pack.
It got up to like 40 at one time.
40 pound backpack. Seriously. So this just felt like a backpack of old, where a big day in the Santa Anas, you'd be riding with 3 liters of water. And
good point.
And so on the e-bike, I had 1 liter of water in the backpack and 1 water bottle, and then a couple small snacks. But I bet you 2 liters of water is going to weigh 6 pounds maybe. So that's probably about close to the 8 pounds for 3.785. So anyways, it really wasn't that bad to have it just took getting used to riding with the backpack again. That was the biggest. I haven't ridden with the backpack.
It's not the best.
It's not the best, but
that Fazua system is so efficient.
Yeah.
It's really efficient.
And I was trying to figure out what the heck was it. Like I was thinking, again, skating on thin ice here, variable frequency drives, like motors that operate at different points of output, lose efficiency the more that you start dropping off the curve, dropping off their design point, like where they're supposed to be.
But don't they also lose efficiency kind of just the more you try to go fast? Like the more output you try to get?
Yeah, it is, I don't know. No, maybe not.
Well,
But like, what if the design point is like that?
How come every electric or gas-fueled vehicle, the easier you are on the accelerator, the better mileage you get?
It's because you might be operating less efficiently, but you're definitely not taxing the motor as hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so you could be like when you're running an e-bike at full boost, it might be the most efficient, but it might also be chewing through the battery the most because it's just putting out more watts.
I guess I'm not following the definition of efficiency in this context, because when I think of efficiency, I think of like more mileage per juice or whatever.
Right. But what if gosh,
I think I might know what you mean, though. There's maybe another form of efficiency might be where you put out your best torque.
Okay.
Or your best power, I guess.
Or if you put in, like, out of the battery puts out a certain amount of watts.
Mm-hmm.
But that motor only converts 98% of it.
Oh.
And then
You think the battery might sometimes put out more than the motor uses?
yes.
Okay.
So then when you click down from full boost, it might be like every watt or piece of juice that the battery puts out, you're using 98% of it. But maybe by the time you click down into like 2 out of 5 trail mode, low trail mode, you're using 70% of that that you just put out. But maybe the Fazua motor is more efficient as you drop down. So maybe instead of dropping from 98 to 70, maybe it drops from 98 to 80.
I see what you're saying. It's definitely over my head. As far as knowing,
It's over my
as
head
far as
too.
being
But
able to know, navigate it and have any like firsthand knowledge of.
I was trying to figure out why the heck is it that I can get so much range out of that Fazua motor battery combination, more so than, I don't know.
Do you think when it's off, it has less drag than other motors?
Maybe
Because that's efficiency.
maybe that could be it too. Yep.
Weighing less is efficient, is going to make it more efficient.
Yep. See, because we got done with the ride, and Eric was riding his Rise, which is 60, and he had gone through. I don't think he was fully boosting, and he had gone through. He had gone through maybe 700
Watt hours.
of battery,
Wow.
and I had gone through. I'm going to say 500.
It's really interesting. I do feel like I'm getting more work out of a watt hour on my Fazua than I did on my EPA on EPA 8 on the
Rise.
And that's pretty anecdotal and not very much hard. Like I can't back that up.
Right. And this was the Eric who he's a peddler. He can get after it.
Yeah, and he wasn't pulling away from you.
No, and I think I was, for the most part, in 2 out of, low trail mode.
That might be, you might be onto something. It's really like past my understanding of how the electrons work. Flow.
I'm skating on really thin ice. It's past my understanding too, but I'm just like, I think.
So you're saying the battery puts out a certain amount whether the motor uses it or not. I always pictured it more that the motor draws as needed.
I think but see, like the motor might want to draw as much as like it's saying I want to draw this much, but it's only using 75% at a certain request as opposed to 90 or 95% at a closer to what it was designed to run at.
Yeah.
Second.
And then of course, again, over my head, but I think connections might be more efficient. Wires could be more efficient. Like there's resistance in every part of the system, right? Like there's loss everywhere that can be like kind of like attempted to be lost less.
I wonder if the Fazua designers, like the whole system, they really worked at like minimizing all losses, and
I also don't know quite enough to speculate with confidence about, are people getting electric motors more efficient with how the coils are coiled and how the batteries are placed? And I don't know.
Yeah.
Like for all I know, I may be asking if they're breaking the second law of thermodynamics. Like
we could be too, but it is crazy how much range I got out of that thing. I think I could, but I will say this: eco mode on the relay is no fun.
Okay, not enough help.
Is not enough help. Like,
do you think it's slower than a muscle bike that's a little light? That's like 10 pounds lighter.
I don't know. Maybe I think it's part of me is that just getting used to riding faster and then clicking down into.
Right.
And part of it too is I think on the Rise there's only 3 modes: Eco, Trail, and Boost. And on the Relay there's 5.
So they can afford to go really low.
I think that's what that really low mode is.
Arguably, maybe having more modes is more efficient.
Could be, yeah.
If it doesn't lead to inefficiencies.
So it also made me think about that ride in the San Gabes. I think I had just had a brief conversation with you about, like if you had time to make it out there. And I think the way that I received the comment that you made was, like when I close my eyes in the top 3 rides of like sacrificing a day of work, like that may not fall into your current ride fantasy.
Yeah.
And as I was riding, I was like, because there are some really extended sections of high speed flow that are amazing. But there is also a whole maybe third of it that's like maybe not as flowy. There's some rad exposure, and that rad exposure is kind of like in some chunky off camber stuff that
It's not the kind of exposure that triggers my fear of heights, though.
right. Okay. Yeah. There
And
are a
it's
couple
super
spots.
scenic.
Yep, it is.
There's a very specific thing for me, and it's like big heights with sheer edges that get me.
Right.
And those are like, it's funny because it's not like if you tumble down that, you probably might as well wish it was you were flying, hitting, splatting at the bottom.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
But
Right. Hangover.
Something
Like
about
there's a
it
lot of hangover
doesn't give me
segments.
that like, ooh!
Right.
And it's super scenic.
Right.
And there are there's some fun kind of techie chunks,
Yeah.
kind of techie sections and some
Yeah.
fun flow sections.
Yeah.
I actually really like riding there.
Yep.
And
No doubt.
especially for the almost as much for the scenery as the trails
Yeah.
too.
And that is so true.
And just to change it up.
Yep.
And they are really good trails.
They are. They are.
But we have a lot of really good trails.
Yep.
And there are certain like ride fantasies that just don't get fulfilled very much there.
Yep. And that I will say, there are three distinct, in my mind, on that 5,000 feet of descending the front side. There feels to me three distinct areas of ride fantasy.
So Sunset, the Merrills, and El Prieto?
Yep.
No.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So the Merrills on the upper, then Sunset in the middle, and El Prieto on
And
the
really,
bottom.
they're all awesome.
They are all awesome. And as we were riding the Merrills, that's where it's the most scenic, but it is also kind of the to me the biggest mountain feel, where there are some spots that the exposure is, if you're falling here, you're gonna wish that you just fell and splatted at the bottom.
Yeah.
And that upper section probably has the most technical segments of the trails, which are amazing. It's maybe the least high speed flowy, continuous kind of segments of the trail. But yeah, and then Sunset, that's amazing. High speed flow
For a while.
That's
one of the good things about this ride is you get some really truly sustained descending.
And there, even like on Sunset, there are rock gardens and tech, but it's all within the context of this high speed flow.
You can kind of blast over everything in this regard.
Yeah, and it's like there's some like little 1 foot 18-inch drops at the high speed. That's just some amazing
turns.
It is, yeah. So
the turns are less kinky on.
Yes,
on
that's
Sunset.
on Sunset than maybe on the Merrills.
The Merrills, they're kink. The turns tend to be switchbacky.
Yep. And in the middle of some of the high speed, like what would be high speed straightaways, there's like a little kink in the trail that kind of kinks, and then it's off camber with janky rocks, and then a little bit of exposure, not the type that's going to kill you, but you're kind of like, do I really want to, So, but yeah, it was an amazing ride. The scenery at the very top, it was clear that day, so you could see the whole LA basin, both downtown and the west side, and the ocean. Is an amazing day.
That's awesome.
So I highly recommend it. And thanks to everyone out there. I forget the name of the group that does all the work out there, but they're doing amazing work out there for all the maintenance.
Cool.
All right.
I got shown. I can't talk about it really.
Yep.
I got shown the new 2025 Fox and Race Face stuff, and I came away from that meeting excited.
Ooh.
So
Stay
over
tuned.
the course of the next
right?
6 months, you're going to see some really cool stuff from them.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Have you talked to anyone in person who's gotten those new the SRAM Mavens?
No one who's actually ridden them yet because
Right.
there's been some weather issues.
Yeah, that's
too.
true. Gosh, since our last show, I think there might have been. I feel like there's been a day to go up into the San Gabes and then a day locally. Only a couple
Yeah.
days locally to actually ride.
Todd might have ridden his. I need to check with him and get the full story.
Right.
And
Right.
it sounds like we need to do a little retune on his.
Got it.
I'm kind of fascinated by the rotor size conversation with them.
Yeah. Like you might downsize rotor.
Well, it's this. Okay, so SRAM has introduced this idea that there's an optimal heat range
Yeah.
to operate in for
Yep.
brakes, and that the only context I've ever heard us talk about this in the bike industry previous to this is we need them cooler,
Right. The rotors need to be cooler.
and the fluid and the pistons.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that we finally have gotten brakes to the point where maybe there are situations where you need them hotter.
Yeah. I was doing a little reading on this. The auto industry in racing has it's pretty sophisticated.
Okay. I
And
believe it.
yeah, your brakes can operate in this whole range, but they're actually most efficient in this range.
Yeah.
And that's both a pad temperature as well as a rotor temperature.
Gotcha.
And so
I guess, yeah, there's a point, like fluid temperature is just pretty much good till it boils, probably.
right, exactly.
Right.
So, but looking at your pad temperature and your rotor temperature, wear and both from a wear perspective and a temperature perspective,
Oh, interesting.
and a performance perspective, like
Power.
power modulation, like maybe colder wears your pads sooner and you don't have quite the right modulation as when your pad rotor temperatures get to a certain range.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to look for mountain bike information on that, and it looks like we're, as with many things, there's just no money like driving that research and R&D.
Part of what fascinates me about it is that if you can run smaller rotors,
Right.
there are some pretty big advantages to that.
Yeah.
Because big rotors bend and rub more, and they weigh more,
And they weigh more, right?
and they hit rocks more. But even if they bend a little, they're more likely to rub.
Yep. And they weigh more.
They weigh quite a bit more, and
Yeah.
that's unsprung weight.
Yep.
So that's gonna literally make it more difficult for your suspension to change directions. Which that's the you want your suspension to change directions easily.
Right.
So, and then there's the question of, well, did the calipers have to get so much heavier? Was there a net, because the calipers are heavier? There's a
Right.
question of, is there a net loss or a net gain of weight
Right.
when you do that?
But these calipers, they're not.
They're not that much heavier,
Right.
right? And even if it was a net zero, just like same
Right.
heavier caliper, lighter rotor,
Yep.
same outcome.
Rather
I'd
on the
rather have the weight
caliper.
maybe in the caliper,
I agree with you. I would rather
Because-
that too.
for if nothing else, just for clearance reasons.
Yeah.
But I imagine that means you can run bigger pads. So it's just an interesting idea that maybe rotors kept getting bigger and bigger, and maybe we'll see some more 180s again in the future. I don't know.
I think if I ran Mavens, I might go 200, 180 to start.
I think they would suggest that you go 180 and only go bigger if you need it.
I could try that too.
I think they would. I don't know for sure. I guess I'd have to get into that a little bit. But I like this idea that, you know what I like about this? If it's true that there's an optimum heat range to operate in, and if it's true that until now, we just only needed them to operate cooler. We
Yeah.
really weren't even approaching the middle of middle of the target.
Right. So maybe the Mavens start getting us to the middle of that target.
It's kind of like if every fork I got, I turned all the knobs all the way in.
Right.
Is that like, are we optimized here?
Right. Right.
Like every brake you get, you put the biggest rotors you can find on it,
Right.
no matter who you are, almost. And like the bigger people still feel like they want more power. Like,
Right.
so I kind of like this super. You know, there's a lot of talk about the Mavens are overkill for a lot of bikes and stuff. Maybe they are. There was a pretty interesting YouTube review of the Mavens that was kind of pretty critical of them.
Oh, okay.
Even in being critical of them, they acknowledged the insane power.
Right.
The main criticism was that the free stroke has a little bit of has like a little more resistance than a lot of brakes, which it does. And I kind of personally don't love that. And in fact, what I like about the Haze is that that's such a light action on the free stroke.
Right.
But the reviewer was talking about how you're going to get more arm pump from that. And I just found that to be not necessarily credulous.
Right.
Because for two things, most people I know mostly hold their brakes just outside the engagement point. So it's not like you're doing reps on that free stroke.
Right. Right. Right.
And then also, is it really enough to tire you out?
Right. Right.
To cause hand pump?
Right.
He claimed like I had to stop in the middle of the ride because I was getting more hand pump than normal and stuff. The review is actually really good in a lot of ways. Like the person was super knowledgeable and a really good rider and really good trails.
Right.
And also had good, like everything they said about the brakes seemed credible to me. Just the conclusion they drew about how big of a problem the stiff free stroke was. I was like, I don't know about that.
Right.
I would make it lighter if I could, though.
Yeah. And who knows, for whatever reason, if that person was having a bad day or if that person had some sort of like negative like experience with SRAM or something.
To pick at their review a little bit, everything on their bike was Shimano, and one of their complaints was that they couldn't run Shimano rotors, which I believe are 1.8. And their point was they wanted an apples-to-apples test with other brakes, so they didn't want to change rotors. And also, like, why does SRAM have a brake that the little tab on the pad rubs on other brands' rotors?
Right.
But it's only on the carrier of the
right.
rotor. And then the other thing was that even though SRAM recommends trying organic pads first, I only run metallic. So it's like, okay, like,
right.
I see what's going on here.
Right.
But other than that, it actually did seem like a pretty fair review. Like
sure.
He acknowledged a lot of good things about them, and all the criticism. They don't play well with Shimano shifters, and I think
interesting.
In a way that's a valid criticism, sort of.
Right.
Especially if you think it's intentional. Or if you think that it could be just as good in every way and play well with Shimano shifters, even maybe. Like,
right.
But that's a kind of that's whose values is that question, right?
Right.
Like, what is the right thing to do?
Sure.
Crush the competition.
Well, I would love to try a set of Mavens.
Yeah, so would I. But I also really want to try some haze.
I do too.
We got purple haze again, and I'm like looking at them almost every day. Like,
gosh, purple on light blue would be a pretty cool colorway.
And I really, really love my TRPs, and the one thing I wish I could change about them is I want the free stroke to come in closer to the bar.
Oh, sure.
I like my levers to engage like maybe 10 millimeters from the bar.
Right.
Or maybe even a little less, maybe 8. Like to where some riders are going to be like, do your brakes
need bleed? Right.
And the TRP is pretty much all the way in, adjust more or less parallel to the bars, like maybe more.
Right.
I still really like them. They're so predictable. I think it's the predictability compared to, say, codes.
Right.
And the lever shape's really good, even though I can't get it tuned. And I've heard the next generation's going to fix this.
Oh, right.
But I think the haze will come in closer, and I wonder if they're as predictable. I don't know. I think I'm sold on mineral oil for brakes, though. I think the Hayes are Dot.
Right. Let me see. Well, I guess the Shimano's are mineral oil. Yep.
And so are Maguras.
Yep. Yep.
And so are TRPs. Right? I think they are.
I'm not sure, but sure.
I'm not sure, but sure. I'm going to look that up because I do not want to be wrong on that one.
I do think that the Mavens might be my next set of brakes.
Yep.
Yeah. 180s. Mavens on 180s.
It looks like TRPs do run on mineral oil. Yep.
Great. I don't know. Is that a show?
Yep. I think it is. Thanks, Auk. Thanks, Jake. Thanks to all the stakeholders at the path. Let's all remember to love the bike we ride.